And Detroit has a new police chief. James Craig accepted the job this week, the same week where there were 12 shootings in a 24-hour period. That was on Wednesday. He says he's ready for the challenge. Again, both of you talked to him. How prepared is he, do you think, Nolan?
Well, I mean, here's an example. People say, what's Kevin Orr going to do? Well, this is a pretty good step that Kevin Orr took here. I mean, Dave Bing was telling us, well, we can't get a good police chief because of the political environment in Detroit. Kevin Orr went out and got a first-rate police chief. This is a guy who's done really good things in Cincinnati. He's done really good things throughout his career, has visible results in Cincinnati where he cut murders, cut crime in general, but particularly violent crime. I think he's got a good police chief here. I think he knows how to run a police department, knows how to put the processes in place that will deal with crime. But, you know, we've got problems in Detroit, I think, that go beyond law enforcement. When you mentioned the 12 shootings, 6 of those people were shot over a fight over kids playing. I mean, you've got some cultural issues in this city in terms of its willingness to use violence and use guns that I'm not sure even the best police chief can deal with.
Is that part of the unique circumstances that I think, Stephen, that you've talked about, that this is a unique job and you're not even quite sure that there's just a specialized number of people who will be qualified to be police chief in this city?
Yeah, no, I think there are. I mean, it's a small, very short list. You know, after meeting James Craig and talking to him about his career and his
What'd you think?
take on Detroit, I have to say I was more impressed than I expected to be. I was skeptical about the translation from Cincinnati to here, but he was able to talk in much more detail about Detroit than somebody who'd never been here before could have, because he is from here and he was an officer here at the time, as he pointed out, when we were the murder capital of the country. And so he has a real sense of what our problems are and how to fix them. He's also, and this is one of my big things with police chiefs, he's also a big advocate of data-driven policing and decisions. He wants to bring CompStat to Detroit. That's something that's worked in New York and DC and some other places that we've resisted doing here because the culture here is supposedly not conducive to it. He says he's going to give it a go. So I think at this point you got to be optimistic and hope that he's able to do those things, because it will make a difference, and it can make a difference in a really short period of time.
You got to admire a guy who would take this job. I mean, remember, Detroit Police Department is still under the federal consent decree, which limits his flexibility in putting new policies in place and putting new strategies in place. He doesn't know who he's going to be working for long term. They gave him a 2-year contract. Sometime during that 2 year, he may be back working for the elected leaders whom he don't know. He doesn't know at this point who that's going to be. I mean, it's a courageous move on his part to leave a job where he was well loved. They tried to keep him, and come up here to take probably the toughest policing job in the country.
You said that he wants to start tackling things with the data-driven solutions. Also, he had talked about bringing the homicide closure rate. He wants to start closing more cases. Did he talk a little bit about how he's going to go about doing that?
Well, in his estimation, we are deploying our officers, you know, inefficiently. He said he's a big believer in cops being in cop jobs and not sitting behind desks or answering dispatch calls. I think that's a big part of what his strategy will be in the early going. Of course, everybody who gets that job at DPD says that same thing. There are some hurdles to that I'm not sure.
Okay, so what are the hurdles? So when people think maybe you could just get more civilians in to do those jobs?
Well, you could, but that adds cost. I mean, if you take a officer off dispatch, put him on the street, somebody's got to do dispatch, and so that's an extra position, even though it's a cheaper position, or you know, you don't have to spend as much for the civilian. It's still an extra position. They don't have the budget for that, so that's going to have to come over time. He's got 400 lieutenants and sergeants eligible to retire in June. That's a scary thing to look at if they all decide to take the retirement. You know, he says he wants to put more people on the street, but he also says he wants to put more people into investigations. Right. So you bring people to accountability for their crimes. And right now, Detroit has the reputation earned of being a lawless city. You can get away with anything. He needs to put an end to that first.
Wouldn't that be tough, though, if you have a lot of those sergeants and lieutenants who are retiring, that those are your experienced people that would be maybe part of those investigative teams? That's part of the...
That would hurt us. And I think, you know, Kevin Orr is aware of that. And that was, I think, part of the rush to get somebody in here to lead the department, to stabilize it and make the case to those officers that they need to stay.
All right. Well, you know, the state of Michigan looked under the couch cushions this week and found a bonus, a projected $483 million in unexpected tax revenue. Oh, what to do with all of the cash. But first off, Nolan, explain why this happened. Explain how we suddenly came upon $483 million.
The economy's growing, and you know that I always say the best way to solve your revenue problems at the state, federal level, wherever, is to grow the economy. So more tax revenue is coming in to Michigan because of the growth in our economy. Now, we've got $2 billion worth of ideas for spending that $500 million.
What to spend it on? What are we gonna spend this on?
And Snyder has a tendency to put it in our pocket, you know, to put it in the rainy day fund, which is a good place for it because that lowers the borrowing costs for the state, lowers the amount it has to spend on debt service, and nobody knows. You can't look at this economy now and all the things going on in the world and know for sure this recovery is long-term and going to take hold. He's smart to build the rainy day fund.
Yeah, you know, Stephen, but people are going to say, can't we just buy a new pair of shoes and then put the rest of it over here? Like, can't we just put a little bit for K through 12 and then put it in the rainy day fund?
You know,
I mean, that's what you're going to start hearing from people.
If I were governor, I'd take most of the money to the track and put it on number 7.
Right, right. And see if we can double that
Comes
baby,
in
right?
all the time, right? You know, I think one of the philosophical problems I have with the governor is that I agree that you got to build that rainy day fund. That was one of the biggest mistakes we ever had was depleting that. But it's just like a household, right? You do always pay yourself first, right? Put money in savings, but you have other demands on your money, and government has other obligations in Michigan that it's not meeting. Look at some of the unmet needs in education. Look at some of the things that we've done with social services. I mean, the number of people who we've pushed into poverty in the last 2 years. I think there are some immediate needs that can be met responsibly with some of that money, and you can save some of it.
Well, and he will use some of the money for those things. But one thing this governor is not going to do is just forget about the reasons we're in this problem.
Well, no,
he's not going to throw money at inefficient programs. He's not going to throw money at school districts that haven't done what they need to do to improve their finances. He certainly is not going to expand welfare in a growing economy. He will invest.
Well, I don't think anyone's saying that.
I'm not talking about welfare. I'm talking about the earned income tax credit, which he eliminated for no good reason, and to save a couple of pennies.
To put the state's finances back on track.
Which help put more people into poverty.
He is not going. Didn't put more people into poverty.
Sure, it does.
He's not going
Took money
to
out of people's pockets.
He's not going to spend this money the way we've always spent it in the past, and that's just let's forget about.
No one's saying that.
Forget about fixing government and throw it away. I think if he spends this money, he'll spend it strategically and use it for the long-term benefit of the state to help communities.
Education is a long-term benefit.
To help school districts operate more efficiently so that 5 years from now we're not in this problem again.
Ronald
Last
Reagan
word.
called the earned income tax credit the greatest job motivator that he'd ever
Reagan,
found.
no.
Snyder has tossed it over the rail.
We'll write that one down. Stephen loves Ronald Reagan.
Right.
All right, well, that is going to have to do it for MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. We're glad that you could be with us. Remember that we are on Facebook and Twitter. Tell your friends about us. Share the show. You can find them all at MiWeek.org. For all of us at Detroit Public TV, I'm Christy McDonald. Have a great weekend. Come back and see us next Friday.